Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Cat's Whiskers TV podcast. My name is Jono Bullard and Andy Haywood and Aaron Lord will be joining me very shortly. On this week's show we're going to be looking back at Panthers games against the Fife Flyers, the Sheffield Steelers and the Cardiff Devils. We'll also be discussing the signing of Guillaume Doucet. And we'll also be looking at the other games in the league and the league table. We'll discuss Pete Russell's appointment as the Great Britain head coach last week. And we've also got some great CWTV questions which cause a lot of discussion and debate. We'll look ahead to the Panthers games against the Coventry Blaze and the Cardiff Devils this coming weekend, and we'll also give a plug to Dave Sims' charity walk which is coming up in March. But first, let's get to the show. With no further ado, it's time to welcome my comrades in arms, Mr. Andy Haywood.
Hello.
And Mr. Aaron Lord.
Hello, John. Are you okay?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. You?
Yep, very well, thank you.
Sure, right then. Well, we'll go right back to last Wednesday night, Panthers against Fife in the Challenge Cup second leg quarter-final. Fife skating away with a 6-4 victory, which gives them 3 wins at the NIC this season. They were good value for that win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they had nothing to lose from the outset, so they always sort of came out hard. And I thought the first period we were okay, but then the second period was really flat from both teams. So for us the third period with them, you know, they were still trailing by quite a few. So they just came out hard, and we were still flat-footed. So they managed to pick the score up a bit and make it a bit closer than perhaps it should have been. But it was relatively comfortable, and you know, we got through in the end.
Mm. Aaron, one of the big talking points from the game was the injury that Chris Higgins suffered. A kneeing incident with Scott Fleming of the Fife Flyers, which saw Fleming get a 5+ game penalty. I've watched it back on the highlights, and I've got to say I don't think there was any malicious intent there at all.
Well, at the time, I kind of didn't really see what happened, because my eyes obviously kind of followed to where the puck was going. But you know, Chris Higgins looked in a lot of pain at the time, and obviously couldn't put any weight on his foot or on his leg as he was getting off the ice. But you know, the ref made the call there and then. It didn't really make much difference, I don't think, to the outcome of the result. It was like an exhibition game at times, really. And I suppose the most important thing was that we got through. And you know, and regarding Higgins, obviously there was a little bit of positive news that he doesn't require surgery, so hopefully, you know, he should be back within the next few weeks or so it wasn't as serious as it possibly could be. But obviously no further action was taken with that player anyway, was it, with Fleming? So, you know, like I say, I don't think it really mattered on the night, and let's just hope Chris Higgins is back sooner rather than later.
Mm. So the game finished 6-4 to the Fife Flyers. Panthers goals, 2 from Cody Wild, 1 from Oak Farmer, 1 from Chris Lawrence. For the Flyers, 2 from Bobby Shamon, Matt Reba, Jordan Fulton, Ned Lukasevich and Chris Wands with the other goals. Panthers winning 11-8 on aggregate, which will see them through to a likely semi-final against the Sheffield Steelers, who, as we record this, are currently 6-1 up in their second leg against the Dundee Stars, which is 9-1 on aggregate. So I think another Panthers-Steelers game to look forward to. 2 of them.
Hey.
Yay!
Well, we haven't seen them for a while, have we? Let's be honest.
No, I mean, it's only been a few days, and you know, it wouldn't be the same without a weekly Panthers-Steelers instalment. You know, just to whet the appetite. Anyway, in between the game against Fife and the game against the Steelers at the Motor Point last Saturday, Panthers made a new signing. Guillaume Doucet, who was formerly with the Hull Stingrays last season, joined from Denmark. Obviously, most fans will remember Doucet from last season. He scored 50 goals, 83 points, so he knows where the net is. And after our discussions on last week's podcast, I think he's exactly what the doctor ordered, Andy.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, he showed straight away with his first weekend. I think he ended up with at least 1+1. he's going to get points. And if he's friends with Max Perron by the looks of it, from what we've seen on social media. And from what I read on the Saturday night's game, he seemed to strike up a good chemistry with Greg Jacina as well. So if he can get on a decent line and get someone feeding him, he could be a real asset to this club. And he's proven in this league with 50 goals last season. I think he was only second behind Chinand, if I'm right, in goals scored last year. And he could be a really, really good signing for us.
Aaron, I think it's a signing that was needed, a real top quality sniper. Obviously, with David Clark out for the rest of the season, we're missing his services up front, and he is a proven at this level, and it can only bode well for the rest of the season.
Most definitely. I think the fact that he is proven in this league is a benefit. He knows what the league is about, and he knows what he can do in this league. I was very impressed with him, to say that he literally landed on the Saturday afternoon, and you're going into, for the Panthers, possibly against your biggest rivals away from home, and to put on the performance that he did was very, very positive, and to back it up with another good performance on the Sunday against the Devils, it is really exciting. I think it's a great signing for the Panthers. It's a very good pickup, and I just think as he learns the systems, just gets settled in Nottingham and has a little bit of a rest, like he says in the post article that he's done with Matt Davis. It's kind of a whirlwind weekend, isn't it? And adrenaline is buzzing, and that kind of carries you through. So I'm really excited to see where what kind of performance he'll give us once he's settled in, and had some training sessions with the guys as well. Like Andy says, he did seem to kind of strike up a good partnership with everybody. Whatever line he was on Saturday and Sunday, I thought he adopted really well, and I thought he was obviously not afraid to get into the dirty areas. He battles for the puck every time, and the thing that he also brings as well is he brings a bit of pace. Now, we have got pace in the side, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but it's pace when he drives straight to the net as well. And that puts pressure on the defence and also, the opposition netminder. And I think we will really see a successful few months for him in the Panthers jersey.
Yeah, I think for me as well, the great thing about having someone like him now in the side is how much pressure it takes off everybody else.
Yeah.
And they're able to relax now, and I think we saw it over the weekend with, I think we had 8 different scorers.
We did,
of the 8 goals that we scored. So the goal scoring was spread straight throughout the team, and you could see there was almost, certainly from what I saw on Sunday, there was more of a spark to the side over the weekend, and the side seemed to have taken a real lift from that signing, which can only bode well, I think. And from early impressions of him, I think he'll settle in quite well, and I think he'll do a great job for us, as you said. Moving on to Saturday, another game against the Sheffield Steelers, this time at the Motorpoint Arena. Ended up in a 4-1 victory for the Nottingham Panthers. Now, I was out on Saturday night. Andy, I believe you were otherwise engaged as well.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, this is all down to you. Yes, you was the only one who managed to see the game, and as no highlights have surfaced yet at the time of recording, can't really comment too much on it apart from what a fantastic victory. So, Aaron, the keys to a 4-1 victory in Sheffield.
Wow, the pressure on me now. This is my moment. So, no.
Thanks,
overall,
Martin.
Yeah. Oh. I lined that one up, didn't I? Really?
Yeah, you did.
No, do you know what? I thought it was an absolute, near perfect performance from the Panthers. Granted, if the Sheffield goal that they scored first, would have stood, then maybe it might have been a different game. It was the right call. It shouldn't have been allowed. So, fair play to the refs on that. But I just felt from that moment on, we just controlled the game. We just totally closed Sheffield down, and the way I describe it is it's kind of like a boxer that's got a longer reach, a longer jab, and we're just keeping them away there. We're keeping them away, and then we dealt 4 very well executed right hooks, and we just looked so confident. And I just think Sheffield were a patch on the side that we've seen at times, but the Panthers never looked in danger. And you just mentioned it briefly before about the spread of goal scorers over the weekend, and that was apparent on Saturday night. And the one thing that impressed me as well was the composure that we had. For example, Benedict's goal, Bruce Graham's goal. People could have easily panicked in those moments, but they didn't, and that resulted in scoring the 4 goals. Obviously, Doucet scoring the first goal is just fantastic for him, and like we've just mentioned, it's great for the team. But it was just an all-round positive performance, and one that I would say is up there with our best away performance of the season so far. We've now gone into Sheffield twice in the last 3-4 weeks, whatever it is, and scored 8 goals against them and only conceded 1. Now, let's be honest, not many fans would have believed that we could have done that pre-Christmas, and I think it's just a credit to the coaching staff of how they set the team up, and the players for executing those systems and those plays. And it was just a fantastic performance. It really was, and very well, deserved. And it just set up for a great weekend. It got us the 2 points in regulation, which is great as well. And it just, like I said, it was the first run on the ladder to get in the 4 points over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to the Steelers official podcast on Sunday morning with Dave Sims and Seth Bennett. They were waxing lyrical about Robert Farmer and how well he played on Saturday night. And my wife, who everyone knows is a Steelers fan, and not the most unbiased one either, but even she came in and she said Panthers ran the game and Robert Farmer was outstanding, should have been your man of the match. And that believe me, that is very high praise indeed.
Do you know what it is about Farmer at the moment is he's playing with his head. And what I mean by that is he's playing the role of just the agitator. He's getting players from the opposition wound up and making them take penalties, but then he's also not taking stupid penalties. And the thing is, he's also putting points on the board. I think listening to that podcast as well, they said that Farmer has got the most points against Sheffield from a Panthers point of view.
Yeah, did he say it was a goal and 9 or 10 assists? I think it was, which is phenomenal performance.
Well, who would have thought that Robert Farmer would have been that guy?
I think for me, it's since David Clark went out injured, we needed one of our Brits to take that mantle. Not necessarily goal scoring, but someone to become a leader. And I think he's taken that role. He's really grown as a player over the last few games. I mean, I thought he was good anyway. I rated him anyway, but I think he's been absolutely exceptional over the past few weeks. I think he's been absolutely brilliant, and you can see how his teammates respond to him as well. He seems to be a very, very popular guy on the roster, and he's prepared to stick up for the team. And the thing is, most of the time we know he's going to lose a fight. But he's not scared to get in there. He's not scared to get his nose dirty. And I think for a player like that, you've got to have an awful lot of respect.
And I fully agree. And I think, when he does fight, he fights for a reason. It's not just because he wants to fight. It's to benefit the team in a certain way. And whether that's through the other, team taking penalties or to actually give the team a kick up the old jacksie. But don't forget this, Farms is 23 years of age.
Mm.
He has so many years ahead of him, and I think he's just going to grow and grow into this stature that he's now become an integral part of the Panthers organisation for me, and he will be for GB in many years to come. But another thing as well, just very briefly, is the Steelers didn't react to him in the way that they should have done. Really, there was times when Jason Hewitt went over to him, and really Sheffield needed that spark, and that's
what from Hewitt.
But he should have really dropped the gloves at that point.
More chance of getting a spark out of a damp wick.
Not that you're
not that I'm biased. Yeah. Not that I'm biased or anything against it. Yeah.
When Brian Schmidt took the boarding penalty, Cullen Eddy skates pretty much from the blue line, I think it is, and then stops dead in front of Brian Schmidt and doesn't do anything. I mean, I think it was Frozen Steel Blog Live or whatever it is said that Cullen Eddy skated like Tarzan and then ended up like Jane. They just didn't really have that spark, or they didn't really take the game when they had an opportunity, and I think that's all down to how the Panthers performed. So a top performance from us on Saturday night.
Andy, Robert Farmer, has he impressed you over the past few weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. He's been a real sort of steady standout for me all season, in the sense that he is getting points on a pretty regular basis for a guy that before he played for us, most people thought he was a bit of a joke player because of his reputation as being an agitator that would lose fights.
But to be honest though, that's quite unfair, because if you look at his points production with his previous teams, he was always scoring around a point a game.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially for Braehead and his latter years with Coventry Blaze, and that's probably what got him the notice by the EIHL side. I forget who it was. I think it might have been Windsor, and he only lasted one game out there. And then, of course, he had that very short spell in the ECHL. Not many British players get to go out there.
No, absolutely.
And he's not like you say a knuckle dragger. The guy scores points. He scores goals. And I think some of his reputation is actually quite unfair. And I'm sure the way that other fans of other teams react to him, they would love to have him on their side.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's, to be fair, that would be how I judge a good player, in my opinion, is would other teams want him? And whether it be, a player because he scores 50 goals a season, or, a goalkeeper that's the best in the league, or whether it be just a grinding player who is going to get the job done night in, night out. He's not going to give up. He's going to put his body on the line for his team. He's going to stick up for people. And Robert Farmer fits the bill. He ticks every single box of that. And like Aaron says, to boot, obviously he's British, so you can still get imports in. He's 23, so he's still ridiculously young, and has got a long career ahead of him.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the stats from the game on Saturday night against Sheffield. 4-1 victory. Goals from Guillaume Doucet, Cody Wilde, Bruce Graham and Brandon Benedict, and the aforementioned Robert Farmer with a couple of assists as well. And my wife saying that he ran the game, which was lovely to hear from her. Of course, on Sunday we played the Cardiff Devils in another massive game at the NIC. Game which ended in a 4-3 overtime victory for the Panthers. We were in the Bunkers Hill straight after the game, and this is what we had to say.
Well, guys, what a phenomenal game of hockey. I think that's all that really can be said about that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's be honest, if either team won in overtime, you couldn't really have had a qualm. It was a superb game of hockey played by two teams who battled all night, and they knew what was at stake. They knew that they needed the points, and it was just end to end for a lot of it, and two completely different coaching styles and completely different team structures going against each other. It was fascinating to watch.
Aaron, 2-0 down at the
the end of the first period, Panthers, I didn't play badly at all in that period, but we're 2-0 down. Cardiff looked to be bullying us a little bit, well, quite a lot actually. The referees I felt were weak tonight, but fair play to Cardiff. If they're going to get away with it, they're going to keep doing it. And I must admit, I thought at the end of that period, if they carry on playing in that way, we are going to struggle, because we didn't seem to have the players to be able to stand up to their provocation. However, it just changed around, and I think from that second period onwards, Panthers started to take control of the game.
There's a few points in there that I think are quite good that you said there. Obviously, Cardiff came out, we've said many a time that we expect Cardiff to be physical, which they were, and I don't have a problem with physical play. I was disappointed in the refs, because I think, for me, physical play is fine, but when the whistle blows, that's kind of where it ends. And for me, at times tonight, Cardiff were borderline thuggery after the whistle. That's where the ref has to step up and take control of the situation. We have guys that in that situation are necessarily not going to go and you drop the gloves. People will say a tough D-man, etc. We don't have that. We have guys that will drop the gloves when it's absolutely necessary. So in that case, I always felt that if we kept to our game plan, kept focused, kept disciplined, then we should really outskate them. But for me, that is what Cardiff brings. They're not going to change. They were never going to change that game plan. I don't see. I don't think. So for me, it was about continuing with what we were what we wanted to do, and I think we got justice in the end. I kind of, Andy's right in the sense of when it goes to overtime, you could have said either or, could have won, but I think justice won tonight, and I think hockey won.
Andy, I thought there was a huge momentum change when Evan Mosey outpaced the Cardiff defence on the penalty kill early in the third period, scored to make it 2-2, and I think from then on it became Panthers' game. Was that something you agree with?
Yeah, I think the start of that third period was always going to be make or break for either team. It was a 4-on-3 power play for Cardiff to start for a minute, and I think a minute or so, and it seemed that there was so much more space, and as quick as we were, if they could get it in the zone, they could move the D-men out, they'd have so much more space to pull Modig out of position to get a good shot off. So that was crucial that we killed off the penalty. I mean, to intercept a pass and literally seemingly stroll past the defence who were busting a gut, but Mosey was just so quick off the mark, and a great finish as well. I think Ban's got a piece of it, but it was a really good finish, and obviously the next shift, almost identically the same thing happens again with Perron, but he's brought down and we get the penalty shot. It was a fantastic save. It was a really good move by Steve Lee on the penalty shot, but just couldn't lift it over a sprawling bounce. And that momentum from that penalty kill really swung the game to our way, I think, and obviously we got the go-ahead goal through Landry, and it was going to be a nervous nine or so minutes, because obviously they were going to be coming hard, and it got physical again for the first couple of shifts afterwards, where they really looked to exert the physical pressure on us. But when they equalised, I was worried that the momentum might swing the other way, but I think we managed to hold on to it a bit, and to be fair, I didn't really think overtime got going until the goal. It was a lot of end-to-end, a lot of cycling the puck, but there was no real sort of clear-cut chances like you'd expect in 4-on-4. And then out of like I say, out of nowhere seemingly, Doucet takes a shot from a real tight angle, but catches bounds out a little bit, and the poise by Perron to, instead of just hacking away at the loose puck, to control it, get it onto his forehand and beat bounds, was a really, really good way to end the game for us.
Aaron, Charles Landry with another important goal, the equaliser. He's making a habit of scoring these real clutch goals at important times.
Yep, and may it long continue. I was just saying earlier on, I think our defence is with every game that we play is growing in stature. We seem a little bit taller, a little bit more confident, and a little bit stronger. So I mean, that's what you want a D-man to step up sometimes, don't you? And it was a cracking shot. We saw it against, I believe, Sheffield on the 27th. Sorry. We've said many a time, I don't think you can fault our defence. Well, they're the best defence in the league, so I don't think you can fault them. And if Landry and other players like Schmidt the other week can contribute in the goals column, then it's even better. But I just think we never gave up again tonight. At the end of the game, I just felt that you cannot, for whatever faults this team has within, whether that's they don't score enough goals, they don't create enough goal scoring chances, etc., you cannot fault this team for effort. Over 60 minutes, I would honestly question whether there is another team out there that battles for 60 minutes for every game. I cannot really think about many games that we haven't battled for 60 minutes for, whether we've won or lost them. I really can't, and I think if you could, you'd probably count them on one hand how many games we've not turned up for in 60 minutes. And for me, we'll be there because of that. If you battle for 60 minutes, then you put yourself in an opportunity where you will win the game. And whether that's an OT, a penalty shootout, or whether it's in regulation, then it's a positive thing in my eyes.
Andy, for Cardiff, Ben Bounds again had an absolutely superb game, and he just continues to grow and grow as a netminder. And I think Bounds probably stopped Cardiff from a bigger defeat tonight, certainly a regulation time defeat.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think overall Panthers were probably the better team and created a lot more chances. I think the shot clock shows that. But I made a tweet earlier on sort of questioning whether Panthers' shot selection wasn't too hot tonight. There was a fair few chances that sort of were straight at Bounds, but by the same token, a goalie who makes 34 saves has played incredible. And I kind of feel that he was robbed on the man of the match tonight because of that, because he was brilliant. I mean, the penalty shot save alone was stellar. It was really, really good. And I think realistically this season especially is really pushing Murphy for that number one GB spot. I personally think, obviously Murphy's been injured a lot this year and they've had to bring in Chuback up in Belfast, but I really think that Bounds is going to be the number one for the foreseeable future.
Okay guys, we talked in last week's podcast about how important it was to get 4 points this week, and I remember you saying, Aaron, it could as easily be as 0-point weekend as it could be a 4-point weekend. We've got the maximum points. It's a fantastic return, and it keeps us, with other results, keeps us right up there in the hunt.
Most definitely. Our Panthers have said it themselves, haven't they? They've said every game is a big game from now on, and it is. And I think you just have to give credit to the guys. Last night, as we record this on, after the game, they totally blew Sheffield away for me. Watching the webcast, totally blew them away. Far the better side. They've then come here. You would say not performed fantastic, but again, they've got the 2 points. As long as we pick up the points, then I'm happy. For me, as a supporter of this team, I have so much respect and so much passion for how this team plays. It's not fantastic. It's not sexy Nielsen hockey that we've seen in many years. It's not necessarily exciting, but it's effective. And you cannot complain when, forgive me if I'm wrong, but we are currently seconds in the Elite League, and we have games in hand on the top team, which is Brayhead, and yes, we have to win those games, but let's be honest, boys, we're in a positive position here. Let's really get behind them, and let's kind of go towards the end and believe that we can be there, because why can't we?
Andy, final word. Do you think we're still within winning the title?
Yeah. Absolutely. Like Aaron says, I think we're currently second as it stands. Obviously, there's a couple of games going on at the moment, but Bray are losing at the moment as it stands, and Belfast are level at Dundee currently. So obviously, if the results go our way, then automatically that's 2 points picked up on Bray straight away. And you know, the thing about the conference system and the fact that people say about the easier running and stuff, that may be, but by the same token, Bray technically have 3 sets of big rivalry clashes with the Scottish teams, so I'd like to think that they would still drop points in that division, despite what some people might say. Yeah, absolutely. This team's, if it's there or thereabouts come the end of March, no one can complain. That's what everyone asks for. Yes, it's great when you win it, and yes, it took us bloody long enough to win it. And once you know, with the expectation that you should be expected to win it more often. But so long as you are there or thereabouts come the end of March, then you've had a good season. And obviously, you know, we're still in the Challenge Cup. There's still the playoffs to come. There's a lot of hockey to come, and anything can happen. And you know, the fact that we now keep grinding out results, even when it's not pretty, you know, there's a real chance. I'm almost starting to believe.
So that was our thoughts after the game on Sunday. Obviously, the highlights have come out since. We've had a few days to reflect on that result. One thing I do want to bring up is an incident that happened in the first period where Jesse Meichin of the Cardiff Devils was given a 2+10 instigator penalty in a fight with Greg Jacina. At the time, I thought fair call. Having watched it again on the highlights, I think actually it was a shocking call by the referees. There was no instigation there, really, in the slightest. Andy, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it was, again, at the time, it looked like he sort of chased him around the ice a bit and dropped, you know, got into a tangle with him. I'm not a fan of the instigator rule, full stop. I understand why it's there, but I just think it's wrong in the sense that it gives players something to hide behind that they shouldn't. You know, you can go out and goad someone to breaking point and then not have any sort of retribution for the things you do. Like I say, I understand why it's there. Like you say, Jono, with the Meichin one specifically, you know, you've got 2 guys that have come together. Nobody's instigated that. It started before they came out of the penalty box. They went in the penalty box initially together. Both, I think it was both for roughing.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, it was roughing. It was 2-minute roughing each.
You know, so they've both gone in for that. They've come out of the penalty box. One's thrown a hit on the other guy, and then they've dropped the gloves. No one's instigated that, and nothing has instigated that. And unfortunately, it constantly keeps getting called. Almost, in my opinion, they look at how a fight starts, and seemingly, if someone has almost offered it, and 2 people are then willing and dropping the gloves simultaneously, they're still trying to look at giving somebody an instigator for starting it, and that's the wrong way to go about it.
Another point I want to bring up from that game, and we did mention it on the recording from Sunday, but Aaron, Evan Mosey's goal, which brought the game back to 2-2, having watched it again on the highlights, the speed that he shows from a pretty much standing start to completely destroy 3 players chasing him, get clear and score the goal, phenomenal.
Yeah, we all knew he was fast, but actually watching those highlights, just you kind of do go, geez, he is, you know, he is really fast. And you know, it's been mentioned before, wasn't it, at the start of the season, kind of the fact that we'd have this pace in the side and speed, and that's what we'd be looking for, you know, quick transitional play and the speed to take effect. But, you know, don't forget as well that Mosey, before he'd even picked up his stick in Nottingham, was a player that wouldn't last, you know, 2 months because his CV wasn't as great as other people's, and you'd have to say that he's been possibly one of our best players this season. And the thing about speed in any sport is, if you've got speed, other people are frightened of you. Can you imagine being Ben Bounds in that net with Mosey skating towards you at that pace? You just don't know what he's going to do, and that proved, in the end with a goal. And
to be fair, though, Bounds was unlucky. He did get a piece of it. I didn't think he had at the time, but obviously with the benefit of a slow motion replay from behind the net, he did get a piece of that. So,
but then is Moses' speed part of the reason why he only got a hand to it?
Yeah, quite possibly.
It's just throwing that out there. But I just think Moses has been a great find, and I hope that he's with the Panthers for many seasons, because he's kind of done. Well, he's just done both roles, hasn't he? He's been on D, he's been on as a forward as well, and I just think those players are very, very, unique and ones that we need to keep. I mean, the Panthers has had speed in their roster on many years. The last one that I can really think of is, Rob Bellamy, and it's just an asset that is really, really important in today's way of hockey, I think, and it was just a great goal.
Andy, Evan Mosey was touted by the armchair coaches as he'd be the first one out. Look, he's got no CV, he's had one season in Holland, he's going to do nothing for us. They couldn't have been more wrong.
No, absolutely. I mean, everyone does it rightly or wrongly. As soon as you sign someone, you go straight on Elite Prospects. You look at what he's done, and his CV isn't as impressive as some of the others. But every year, Corey seems to find a guy who has very little experience that people want, very little in terms of resume, and yet they turn out to be gems. He's said before in the past that he takes a gamble on certain players, and if they don't work, they don't last. That's the best way to look at it. But look at some of the ones he's signed like that, where he's taken risks. I know Billy Ryan was one, because he was coming off the back of bad injuries.
He'd been out all the previous season, hadn't he? So.
Yeah, obviously Matt Francis was a huge gamble. And to be fair, he was probably our franchise player last season.
I suppose even this season, you look at Charles Landry.
Yeah,
who I think, and I think Landry has been excellent for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at some of these signings that have been made that people perhaps aren't over enthralled with, but one way to look at it again is, I suppose, if there's no hype on them, then anything they do is a bonus. If you're not expecting a player to score any goals or get any points or do anything, and they turn out that they do, you're always going to be enthusiastic about them still. Evan Mosey for me is probably one of our most consistent players. He's not a goal scorer. He's not a 100-point guy. 70 assists, but he's going to do his job. He's going to turn up every night. He's going to skate as fast as he can when he gets the puck. He's going to back check hard to get back into position, and he's a great player.
Okay, so Panthers against Devils, a 4-3 overtime win. Panthers goals from Robert Lakovic, Evan Mosey, Charles Landry and Max Perron. Cardiff scoring through Mark Richardson, Joey Haddad and Carl Hudson. So, shall we have a look at some of the other games that took place?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. Not a great weekend for the Belfast Giants. Two games that they were pretty certain would be expected to win. However, a 4-2 home defeat after an excellent performance by the Hull Stingrays, and then losing the next night in Dundee 3-2 on penalty shots. Got to say, that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very tight down the bottom for that last playoff space, especially after last weekend. So you expected Hull to be coming out strong and going for the win, but that is a surprise for
a 4-2 loss at home by Belfast to the Hull Stingrays. That'll be a shock. And again, the next night to lose on penalty shots. Again, that's that last space. There's only 2 points between 9th and 7th with Hull, Edinburgh, and Coventry. They're going to be fighting now till the end of the season just as much as the people at the top, because they want to be in the playoffs.
Aaron, Braehead going from strength to strength, 5-1 on Saturday against Fife Flyers, followed by a 4-1 victory in Hull on Sunday. Braehead just continue picking up the wins.
Yep, it's they've certainly got the momentum. It seems that they've got the confidence, and it looks like it's going to take something big to stop them at the moment. So, what can you say that kind of hasn't already been said about them? They just need to keep picking up the points. Whether that's, I know probably Finna won't like me, but even if it's a 3-point weekend or maybe even a 2-point weekend, as long as they keep picking up points, other teams are going to be wary of them. And I can't see them dropping many points at the moment, because they're not just winning by the odd goal, in games. They're actually, they're big margins that they're putting up there, and they're also getting points and goals from players that you might not have thought originally. So again, a little bit like the Panthers, they're spreading it. Their goal scoring is coming from, the whole roster, which is very positive. And I just think it's going to take something big, like I said, to stop the Braehead train at the moment.
Other results that caught the eye: Coventry going to the Big Blue Tent on Saturday night and getting a 5-4 win. That was a big victory for the Blaze.
Fantastic result, that is. I mean, who would have actually thought it?
No, not at all.
Absolute. And the way they did it as well is fair play to them. The only downside is that they couldn't obviously, match that on the Sunday night at home to Sheffield. But a great result, and that affected Cardiff as well, didn't it? Which is great from the league's point of view and our point of view. But yeah, well done, Cov, on that night.
And then finally on Sunday, Sheffield snapping their 5-game losing streak by winning 3-2 at Sky Dome against the Coventry Blaze. Good for them. Anyway, moving on. After we recorded last week, because we recorded early, it was revealed that Peter Russell will be taking over as the Great Britain head coach of the senior team. Russell, of course, you may know, was coach of the under-20 team that recently won a gold medal in the World Championships. So, guys, what do you make of that appointment?
Really good. I think the guy deserves it. He's done wonders with the younger lads. I think he deserves the call to step up and see if he can do it on the bigger stage. I know a lot of people not necessarily doubting or questioning his abilities, but obviously there's a slight doubt in the fact that because of his job outside of GB, will he be able to see the elite league quite as much as he perhaps want to? But you know what, he's done a fantastic job. He deserves the reward, in my opinion, and I'm excited to see where this leads GB senior team.
I think for me, I mean, you make a good point about him not seeing the elite league players. However, he has appointed Edinburgh coach Richard Hartman as one of his assistants, who will obviously get to see the players. But I would think that the vast majority of players that are in the senior team will have come through the junior system anyway, and he will have seen them. So I don't think that's too much of a problem, to be honest.
I'd agree on that. Just jumping in there, because with all due respect, do you need to see the elite league, GB players? Do you have to watch them, week in, week out?
Probably not week in, week out.
I don't think you do.
You've got to know who you're picking, and what you've got to think of is he literally has a blank canvas and has to pick a squad and a team that he thinks will compete at these tournaments. There's no point saying, well, this guy's getting, so many points, but if he doesn't fit in with the system that he wants to play, he's not going to be able to see that just by looking at stat sheets on websites. So he's, I think there is a level of he will have to see the players himself, not just rely on hearsay and obviously Richard Hartman's input. I think at some point he will have to have a good look at some of the players in the league.
I think what's interesting as well is, on that, other people have commented and said how it's a positive move that he hasn't got another job, within hockey. He isn't a coach of the Nottingham Panthers, the Sheffield Steelers, or, even a team in the EPL. He can really focus on this job role. And I think it's an obvious sign of where, UK ice hockey want to go, in the fact that they've appointed somebody that has been part of the junior coaching setup, had very good success at the under-20s, and for me it's an appointment for the future. What I'd like to see with this appointment is it's not just for 1 or 2 tournaments. It's actually put in place that we're going to build something here and build on the work that the previous coaches have done, because there's some very good youngsters coming through the ranks which nobody will know better than himself. And I just think we're possibly seeing a shift in how Team GB will be set up and the team that we actually see on the ice, because maybe we're going to go with youth. Maybe we're going to give these youngsters a bit of a chance at a higher level, whether that be, obviously not straight away, but we maybe just now might be building for the future, and that can only be positive. And I just think it's a brave move, it's a bold move, but I think it's actually the right move.
Yeah, you see, just touching on that point as well, I think certainly the next tournament we'll see a couple of younger, perhaps new faces coming in, and some of the regular old guards going, because we are going to be going through a transition period within the next year or so as the older guys, look to retire. And even if they don't look to retire from league hockey, the chances are there's going to be someone younger and fitter that perhaps fits the bill for Russell. So you're going to be seeing the potential ends of an Ashley Tate or a Colin Shields, a David Clark. Especially if the injury doesn't heal up as well as we'd like it to. You're going to see the end of not these guys' careers, but certainly their sort of first names on the GB International on the scene. You know what I mean? The past sort of 3 or 4 years, people like Tate and Shields and Clark would have been the first names that you put down on the sheet. Now it's not the case, and at some point they are going to have to face facts that they won't get picked, or they'll themselves call time on it. And I think with the appointment and with him obviously working so well with the youngsters, it wouldn't surprise me if that transition period came a little bit sooner than people were expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the Premier Sports documentary that was done earlier in the year from last year's under-20 tournament in Dumfries, and it's quite clear that the guy has so much passion for his job, so much passion for his players. I'm with you, Andy. I think it's a fantastic appointment, and I think it is the right appointment at this time for the senior team. And like you say, I can see him bringing a lot of youngsters through, because unfortunately a lot of the players that we have are now starting to hit the wrong side of 30, and they've got to be replaced. And the only way they're going to be replaced is if players, while they're young, get tournament experience. And I think he's exactly the right guy to bring that through.
Just on that though, you need a good mix. You can't just say, look, you're over 30, we're getting rid of you, thanks for all your service. You need the right blend. You still need some experience.
I agree.
In that team. And, I agree with what Andy's saying. I do think you will be looking at certain players not being involved, like Andy says, whether that's down to themselves or whether it is down to Pete Russell himself. But let's not just say, right, this guy's been successful at under-20s, let's just basically carbon copy that. because it is going to be different. Senior teams are different to under 20s or junior teams. So he's also got to manage and coach some experienced players there, which he will need. He will need them to help develop these guys and to be there, because it's very well playing in EPL or lower, or even the elite league, when they get their chances, these players. But going away for a tournament, being away for a certain amount of time is very different, and you need that experience there to help and to grow these players as well. So I don't think you're going to see a mass exodus, but I agree that there will be players that sadly their time at GB will be ended shortly.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't foresee a mass exodus, but you've got to think that young players that we forget are young, people like Steve Lee, Lakovic, Farmer, and players like that, obviously from our club, they've been to multiple tournaments.
Yeah.
If you need if obviously I'm not doubting that there's an age limit where you hit 32 and all of a sudden that's it, you're done, you've got to go. If they're good enough, they will get picked. But I think we will see, because of his work with the youngsters and the youth, especially, I think we'll finally start seeing an end of picking players by reputation as opposed to necessarily picking the right squad. I also think it will be the end of the dual nationals as well, which every now and then you get a couple creep back in and stuff, but I personally don't agree with it if there are good enough players out there, and there will always be an argument as to whether what constitutes a player being good enough. I just think when you look at some of the ones that have been bought in, they're all technically the wrong side of 30, like some of the older guys. That's the type of thing where I would like to see them, blooding in the youth and giving them the experience, rather than picking a 34-year-old Canadian who's lived here for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I actually think that if the dual national is better than what we've got, then you pick him because he's available to you. But I agree. I think if the dual nationals are no better, then we stay with the British lads.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a big Corey Nielsen fan, but at his age, yes, he brings you experience. But at his age, when he played in the tournament at GB, and Rod Sarich was another one, would it have been better to give somebody that wasn't given a chance there, a younger guy? Personally, I think that sort of situation would have been better to see a youngster given the ice time in a major tournament, in a World Championships or an Olympic qualifier, just so that they've got that experience, so that when it comes to times like now, who knows where they'd be.
Well, Peter Russell's first tournament as GB senior coach will be in the Netherlands in the summer in the World Championships, and I'm sure from all of us we wish him the very best of luck for that. Going to look at some of your Ask CWTV questions that you've kindly sent in once again. Thank you very much. If you want to send a question in for us or comment on the show in general, please contact us on Twitter. We are at CatsWhiskersTV, and you can also use the hashtag AskCWTV. First question comes from our old mate Paul Baum, and he asks, are you disappointed that mainstream media in the UK and the USA only realises UK ice hockey exists when something bad happens? Andy?
Yes, I am, in the sense that, it would be nice if we had, widespread and mainstream coverage of our sport in general. But I think, realistically, we've got to understand where we are as a sport in this country, and certainly across the world. There's not many, people have heard of us, but no one really knows the standard and stuff when you speak to people around the world in hockey hotbeds. But we're getting there as a league. The crowds have been on the rise recently, and obviously the CHL, and the Continental Cup, we've started to spread the league name around with the teams that are entering these things. So I'd like to think that eventually we'll get there, but I think at the moment, it's understandable that that's all we see because it's so shocking.
I think for me, and this obviously I think Paul is alluding to the Grimaldi incident that was featured heavily on the BBC website and also featured on several websites and networks throughout North America. The optimist in me likes to think that they'll see it, they'll realise that we do play hockey in this country, they'll see a big crowd at an arena and actually playing in arenas and not little shabby rinks. However, you're right, it is something that only seems to appear when something bad happens, and I think one of the last times it was heavily featured was the bench clearance in Coventry, which got heavily featured over in Canada. And then you have to look at the BBC, featured very heavily last week towards the weekend on the front page of their website. And then they sort of ignore the good news stories, which are things like, say, Brayhead, a 5-year-old franchise who are probably selling out most of their home games now. That's a real good news story, but I guess that doesn't get the readership.
I suppose realistically it's the way of the world as well, in the sense that bad news sells better than good news these days, unfortunately.
Yeah. Aaron, what's your take on it?
Pretty much what you guys have said, to be honest. Obviously, it is disappointing, especially, like Andy said, when crowds are on the up. I think, if you look at the Panthers Steelers on Boxing Day and the day after, somewhere between 15 and 17,000 people watched those two games. The other games in the Elite League over that period were either sellouts or very near to sellouts. So, from that aspect, it's very positive for the sport. But it's more disappointing for me in the UK, sporting media channels, that it's not being portrayed in the positive light. Something like that is obviously going to go worldwide, and hockey in other countries are going to see it, and they are going to view that as possibly the UK hockey. But they're also hockey people, and they'll know that doesn't happen every game, whatever league you play in. It is a very unique incident. So for me, it's more disappointing in the UK media that we don't see enough positivity about the Elite League. But it's kind of like what Andy said at the end there, isn't it? Bad news sells quicker and is more viewed than necessarily good news. But it is disappointing in answer to Paul's question.
The second question comes from Clantastic. An Elite League hockey club needs to be a business. Does the business also need to be a hockey club? Example, junior development. Now that is one hell of a question. So who would like to come in on that one first?
Yeah, go on, man.
Well done, Andy.
Now, great question, though. You've got to say.
Fantastic.
I think in a perfect world, yes, it does. It's the simple answer. I would love to see like a junior development league, or even like a farm team league, like they have in the States. Something of like a feeder club for every Elite League team. But I think the varying financial structures and the way that teams do business, I don't think it would be possible, because I think it would probably help and benefit some of the younger players, especially at some clubs. But I also think at other clubs they would then start to struggle financially with obviously the business side of it, which is obviously something that needs to be stable. We've gone through a spell now of a few years where we've had a stable league, and I can tell you, when I first started coming at the back end of the ISL years, I was only young, but it wasn't much fun, watching the same four teams come into the arena and watching you play the same players and the same teams all the time, and then the threat of actually there not being a league full stop because teams were dropping out so frequently. So there's got to be, teams have got to be stable, they've got to be financially secure, and I suppose as well it's something that every team has got to have a will to do as well. That's the other thing. You can't, as much as the league is run on some sort of democracy, as I understand, albeit a strange one where some people have more say than others, but fair enough. You can't have a system where 6 people say yes, we're all for it, and only 4 say no, we're not, and it ends up going ahead because the 4 that say no, we're not happy with it, or we probably can't justify doing it financially, and it would then hamper the league as a whole. So I think, like I say, in an ideal world, the short answer to that question is yes. The business side of hockey does need to emphasise the hockey club side, and junior development would be a fantastic way to do it. But at this current stage of where we are as a league, I don't think it's viable right now.
I think for me, it has to be a business first at the moment. We've had enough stories in the past of teams that have spent beyond their means and gone bust, or they've phoenixed and come back with a different company name. I'd like to think that all teams are living within their means at the minute. That's probably a bit of a pipe dream, but I'd like to think they are. However, Clantastic makes a great point about junior development. I think the only way you're going to sort of grow the league and get British development is if some links are formed with junior clubs. I'd like to see some links between, say, from Elite to EPL to ENL as it was. So there's a definite system coming up from ENL right up to the Elite League. And I know there was something mooted about an under-20s league. I don't know how far advanced that has become. And I know Simsy was talking about it in the summer, and he was quite adamant that it was going to happen, but it seems to have gone very quiet on that.
I have heard that they're still in talks. And I think that would be a brilliant idea, because there's nowhere for these kids to go once they go from under 18s. The exceptional players that will be in Pete Russell's old under 20s squad and things like that. They have nowhere to go after under 18s other than making the grade up. So an under 20s league would be a brilliant move, I think. Not only for sort of our league and for the development of our league, but you got to think of the individuals themselves. It would be far more beneficial for them because of the ice time that they would all get.
Aaron, you got anything to add onto that?
No.
Shall we move on to the next question then?
Just very briefly, because I think you've both made very good points there, and obviously I don't want to drag it out too much, but for me it's everybody is different, every owner is different. I think it has to be a business first, because again, like you said, Jono, we don't want to go back to the times where people are dropping out or they can't afford to run anymore. It feels like the Elite League is starting to build some good foundations. There's still a lot more work to be done, but you need every club to be financially viable for that to happen. The junior development side of it, for me, comes down to the personnel involved. Some people seem more in tuned and actually care about that a bit more than others. It'd be nice if the league as a whole implemented it, but that is, in my eyes, many years away. So yeah, that's just for me. I think it's down to personnel, and really, I'd like the clubs to be looked at as a business first, because I don't want clubs dropping out of the Elite League like we've had in the past.
Okay. Next question comes from Adam Reddish. He says, do Clan have an unfair advantage in attempting to win the league with the way the conference system is configured? Before we discuss that, we also had more of a comment than question from Twist Again 1964, or Richard Martin, as I think his real name is. He says, it's as the rules state, so let's not lower ourselves discrediting Clan's efforts. Success for any team is good for the league. Let them enjoy their moment if it comes and not devalue success. And I think that's a good point, because they've not won anything yet.
Nope. No, they haven't. No. Richard makes a very valid point. And another way to look at it is, if Panthers had converted their overtime or penalty shot losses, or a few of them, then we could potentially, with our games in hand, be above the Clan. So, like you say, the Clan haven't won anything yet. People are presuming that they will obviously be more successful in their remaining games due to the conference system. I think, for me, if Clan win the title, then at the end of the day, you have to give them full credit for it. You're talking about a franchise that's 5 years old and has grown significantly in that period. The conference systems are what they are. I don't think that should devalue Braehead's title win if that is what eventually happens. For me, whoever wins the title deserves it because they've collected the most points.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. I think if Braehead do end up winning the league, they'll have deserved it. And I do honestly think that talking about the conference system is a bit churlish. All the clubs agreed to it. These are the rules. This is how it works. If they win the title, then they do so on merit, as far as I'm concerned. However, I still think there's an awful long way to go and an awful lot of hockey to be played before that happens.
Just very briefly, on that, about the conference systems. Say if the Panthers didn't win it and we were very close to the Clan by 1 or 2 points, it will probably come down to the fact that we've performed poorly against the other conference teams.
Yeah.
So, the conference in that system, there's no downside because we are currently the best performer in our conference. So it's kind of an easy cop out, isn't it? Really.
Ultimately, these things don't get talked about when your team are winning things.
No, you're absolutely spot on.
It's the same when we were winning the league. It's the same when Belfast win the league. It's the same. Well, to be fair, it's the same in any sort of debate. If there's a tangible that you can work to be on your favour, it will always get worked in your favour in an argument. To answer Adam's question as to whether Braehead have an unfair advantage. No, they don't. They still have to go out and win these games. And the thing I always think of that I'm not sure if it gets overlooked, but it never really gets mentioned that much, is the fact that realistically, in Braehead's conference, they have 3 big rivals because of the vicinity of the Scottish teams and obviously the rivalry of the Scottish teams. You can talk about our rivals are Sheffield, and there's Coventry, who the fans seem to think is the bigger rivalry, and then there's the rivalry sort of built on success and respect with Belfast and stuff. But it's not the same as a real local derby like the Scottish teams have. And I think I would be very surprised if other teams in that conference had the same resources or perhaps even the same budget as Braehead do. But they still want to win just as much as anybody else. And we've seen in the past that the results go their way and stuff like that. These other teams are going to win conference trophies themselves. So there's silverware up for grabs for everyone in that regard. So I just think that, I agree with what you say, Jono, that it does seem to be very churlish. Braehead were 5th in the league. This never gets talked about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And I just think it's a shame for Braehead and the fans especially that these things get brought up in this type of situation, because realistically, in my own personal opinion, obviously everyone else might have a different one, but I just think the short answer to Adam's question is no. I don't think they do have an unfair advantage. If you win all your games, you're top of the league. It's in your own from day one. The league standings are in your hands, and if Braehead win more games than everyone else, then they're crowned champions, and rightly so.
Final question comes from Tom Middleton, and he says, do you think 3 points for a regulation win and 2 for an OT win would be better? There's currently no incentive to win the game if tied near the end. sometime try to run the clock down to guarantee the 1 point. I had a look at this, and so what I did was I converted the current league table to if it was 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an overtime win, and 1 point for an overtime or shootout loss. So this is what the table looks like under those circumstances. Clan still top, 71 points. Belfast second with 61. Sheffield third with 60. Cardiff fourth with 58. Panthers fifth with 58, having had less regulation wins. Fife are in sixth with 42 points. Hull with 38 in seventh. The Blaze are eighth with 34 points. Edinburgh have the same number of points. Again, Coventry higher on regulation wins, and Dundee still at the bottom on 24 points. So quite a spread. So to compare the spread, you're looking at 71 points at the top to 24 at the bottom. In the current table, we've got Clan at the top on 49 points, Dundee at the bottom on 21 points. So I think it can be argued that 2 points for a win does make it closer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I understand the concept of it. Should a regulation win mean more than an overtime win? But I think the idea of the whole overtime system and a shootout is very much a chance of it's not about necessarily the winning or losing. It's giving one team that chance to pick up an extra point as opposed to it being a draw. So I think I think we get the majority of our rules from the EIHL and the show and stuff. And I just think that over there in the biggest leagues, they're going about it in the same way that we are, then we should probably keep it like that.
Aaron?
To be fair, Andy's just stolen my line that I was going to say, to be honest, because I was going to say, if it's good enough for the NHL at the moment, then it's good enough for me. I kind of see the argument, and I can see, why people are saying it, but I think people are kind of just saying it just for something to say in a certain manner. They want to just try and change something, but like I say, if it's good enough for the NHL, it's good enough for me.
To be fair, going on to obviously the work that you've done, Jono, regarding the table, for me, if 2 points for an overtime win and 2 points for a regulation win means that the league's closer, more exciting, then I'm all for it.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for sending your questions in. Some real quality questions coming in this week. Please keep them coming in. Okay, we're going to finish up by looking ahead to Panthers games coming up this weekend. On Friday night, Panthers take on the Coventry Blaze at the NIC with a 7:30 face-off before facing the Cardiff Devils at the Big Blue Tent on Saturday night with a 7 p.m. face-off. So, again, 2 more huge games for the Panthers this coming weekend. Again, I'll have to say 4 points is an absolute must to keep the pressure on Brayhead.
Yeah, absolutely. The website have said that every game's a big game now, and it really is from now on in. We've got to pick up points and hope that Brayhead don't. Ultimately, yes, if we win our games in hand, we go level on points, but ultimately, we need to get above them. So, we're still a little bit relying on other teams, but at the end of the day, we're playing catch up. There's not a lot of room for error at this stage of the season. So, a nice run would certainly help, and let's hope that it continues this weekend.
Aaron, the Blaze coming into Friday's game, having lost their first leg of their Challenge Cup quarter-final against Brayhead this evening, as we've been on air, and having lost against Sheffield on Sunday, but a good win against Cardiff last Saturday. As we spoke about last week, Chuck Webber's made the difference to them. They seem to have tightened up at the back. They've certainly got more disciplined. It's not going to be an easy game on Friday, is it?
No, it's not at all. Like you've just said, Coventry seem a little bit more defensively sound, a little bit more disciplined, as you say. But we've just had a very, very positive weekend with two different performances, but 2 positive performances. it'll be exciting to see what Doucet brings after a week of training. And let's be honest, if we have serious title aspirations, then both games are games that we need to win. The Coventry game, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because they can be feisty. They have players that can hurt you on occasions. Stewart, for all his antics, is a very, very good netminder, and we've seen him in the previous games against the Blaze that Tanaka has come into our building and has been a nuisance and has been a positive player for the Blaze. But I would just like us to just come out and be positive. I want to see confidence from us now. We've now been on a run and put in some performances, and at times when our backs have been against the wall in the sense of we've had to get 4 points from a weekend, we've actually got the 4 points. And I'd just like that to breed a bit more confidence, and let's see that. Let's see that in the players. Let's see that in the crowd and us as fans. And let's be confident. Let's believe that we can actually win this. And when I say win this, win the league. Let's. We've had so much doom and gloom in this team in the past, and what's wrong and what needs to be changed. But we're currently second, and yes, we're not the most exciting team, but let's be positive. And I just think that could start on Friday night against the Blaze. The following game is very, very tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Realistically, Cardiff is probably the hardest place to go and get a result. I personally think, because of the size of a rink and the size of the team that you're having to play and the style of hockey that they play, it just makes it exceedingly difficult to go and get anything out. So we're going to have to be, we're going to have a real smart game plan, and it's going to have to be executed nearly perfectly for us to get a result. But it isn't impossible. And
we've done it in the past.
Absolutely, we've done it before, and we'll do it again, no doubt. But obviously, I'd like to think, like you say, Aaron, with the streak that we're on at the moment and the run that we're going on, if we get a good result on the Friday, we should be going into that game full of confidence. Cardiff are on the back of a 1 point weekend, and it's their first game of the weekend, so they're going to be smart in for the result that they had against us last time. They're going to be coming out fresh and hard. We're going to be in a tough game on Saturday night in the Big Blue Tent, and it is going to be difficult. But these are the type of games that will make or break us, and will prove whether we will be good enough or not come the end of the season.
One word for me, sorry boys, just on the Cardiff, that I would say is discipline. That is what will be the difference for me. If we manage to stay out the box, then we give ourselves a great chance of picking the 2 points up in that game. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's got to start on Friday night. It's got to start with 2 points on Friday night, because if not, that puts even extra pressure on the boys for the game against Cardiff. In all honesty, I'd take 3 points this weekend.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because let's be honest, Brayhead aren't going to win every game from now until the end of the season. For me, it's about who picks up the most points, on a regular basis. Because not every team is going to go unbeaten from now to the end of the season. It's about building momentum, and momentum comes from 3 and 4 point weekends. 3 point weekend isn't a disaster.
No, absolutely, I agree.
It's not, but with Brayhead only having one game this weekend, a 4 point weekend would start to put massive pressure on them.
I agree from that aspect that one extra game means another further 2 points, etc., and pressure, but that's looking very short term. I think now we have to start looking at, like, we're now coming into the stretch, aren't we, really? And although ideally we want to pick the 4 points up to put the pressure on Brayhead, 3 points in the longer scheme of things isn't a disaster.
Okay. Well, I think we will leave it there with the game previews for this weekend. Before we go, just quite an important announcement about a charity walk that's taking place. As we all know and love David Sims, and he will be doing a 88-mile walk from his home in Birmingham to the Sheffield Arena on Wednesday, the 18th of March. He starts it. This is going to be in aid of Weston Park and Amy Usher, who is, of course, a Steelers fan, who's very sadly ill with terminal cancer and uses the Weston Park Hospice quite regularly. He will be doing this with Neil Edwards and Elliot Hall from the Steelers organisation. Currently, they've raised £2,297 on Just Giving, so a phenomenal amount. We've made a donation from the show here. So whatever you think of Simsy and whatever you think about him, this is a very worthwhile charity, and if you can spare a few quid for his cause, then please do donate if you can. Our friends at A View from the Bridge podcast will be raffling off a Colin Shields Game War GB shirt in aid of this as well, so look out for that on Twitter. So if you look for Simsy on Twitter, you'll be able to get all the links to their Just Giving page. Okay, I think that's about it for this week, so many thanks, Aaron.
Absolute pleasure, Jonathan.
And many thanks again, Mr. Haywood.
No worries, thank you very much.
Okay, have a good week, gentlemen, and once again, thank you very much to you for listening. We will be back next week. Until then, goodbye.